Hey guys, I just finished listening to the Supreme Court arguments today. Couple hours of listening to the Supreme Court justices question attorneys for these different challenges to the program that's at the center of this, that the Biden administration put forward that basically would wipe away a certain amount of student loans for certain borrowers. So it's a specific borrower, specific amount of money, but would essentially say, okay, you don't have to pay back this certain amount of money. Sometimes that's called student loan debt relief. To others, they would not call it relief. They would call it illegal, which is why the Supreme Court is hearing these arguments right now. So a couple key takeaways. The first one doesn't really have to do a lot with these cases. It just has to do with having the ability to listen to the Supreme Court. And it's funny listening to them. I mean, first of all, you're struck by how brilliant all of them are. All of them asked really interesting, complicated questions. It did make me wonder, should I have gone to law school? And then quickly realized, no, I should not, because just listening to the arguments and the challenges, because they're directly questioning the attorneys, makes my heart race. If you're an attorney in the hot seat, man, you have to be ready to answer questions from the Supreme Court justices. And it's rapid fire and you get interrupted. The other thing is that they crack sort of funny, nerdy legal jokes with each other, which I thought was cute and very collegiate in a lot of ways. So you hear about the divisions among conservative and liberal justices. But, it was interesting to see how they operated as a group, as a panel, questioning these different attorneys. One of the main things that the justices focused on, and there are several cases that are challenging this program. One is a case of several states that is challenging this federal program. The other are attorneys representing individuals. And in these cases, one of the things that they all had in common is who has standing and who has authority. So for critics, it's whether or not the Biden administration has the authority to unilaterally forgive some student loan debt, and whether or not that's just canceling someone's debt, just the federal government just saying you don't have to pay that anymore, even though you agreed to. Does the government have the authority to do that? The second thing is whether or not the people that are challenging the federal government or the states have the standing, have the actual rights to challenge in courts. And that standing question is a key one for these justices. The total cost of this debt forgiveness that could range between $10,000 to $20,000, depending on the borrower's situation, according to Chief Justice Roberts, would total $400 billion over 30 years. So that'd be $400 billion less coming back to the federal government. And so one of the arguments from some of the justices was like, hey, wait a minute, Congress really represents the people and how they're going to spend our money. And so would Congress approve $400 billion being given to people over the course of this time period? And does the executive branch have the authority just to wipe it away and not involve Congress at all? So the added context to that, though, is Congress actually passed a law in 2003 in the wake of 9/11 saying the education secretary, in the event of a national emergency, would be able to waive certain student loan fees or payments. And mainly this was to help service members. But that was up for debate in these arguments because the education secretary now, under both Republican and Democrat administrations, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, has temporarily waived certain fees because of the situation we were all in over the last couple of years. Now that the Biden administration wants to waive debt permanently, that's really the question about whether or not Congress gave authority to the education secretary to be able to do that. I mean, that's just scratching the surface, okay? So really, here's, again, the big takeaway from today is whether or not the people that are challenging, the cases that are challenging this plan by the Biden administration have standing to challenge it. Whether or not the Supreme Court's going to say, okay, you can actually legally challenge this, you have standing to do so. That's going to be a high bar that they're going to have to cross. If they cross that and the justices say, yeah, they do have standing to challenge this, then the question is going to be really a question of authority, of who has the authority to actually do this. Can the Biden administration do this unilaterally? Did Congress many years before kind of set the stage for this to happen? And so that'll be an interesting legal conversation. But I don't think there's, I'm seeing a lot of different headlines from the way that I saw it. It could really go either direction. So we'll have to wait and see.